On this day in 1993, Kim and Kelly Deal and their merry band The Breeders dropped a sophomore outing that would not only help evolve the growing alternative rock landscape of the 90s, but would act as a fundamental piece of forming my musical tastes at such a young age to bring it to where it is today. The album in question is Last Splash, and it's an album that, along with records like Jagged Little Pill and Dookie, was on heavy rotation growing up. My mom spun this record a shit ton, and it's one that stuck with me as the decades have passed. It's a quintessential summer album, in my opinion, and is an all-time classic. It's really short and tight, but it's got a lot of really fun ideas in the pot, along with having some other fun facts that'll crop up throughout this video as I rank each song from least to most favorite. But along with other records that I would call foundational to my musical journey, this was a blast to revisit and spin in heavy doses to kind of round out a ranking. Similarly to other classics, there isn't a bad track on here. There's just a hierarchy at which of the songs I prefer, and I'm gonna break it down. Let's cut the bullshit, give it a like if you're excited, and let's start with the bottom of the rankings. While the first version of Raw that comes in earlier in the track listing is a bit higher in the rankings, the reprise isn't bad. I really love the lead riff of this, and I'm glad that it gets to come in and close out the album. But similarly to other things I've put on the bottom of these rankings, like intros and other interludes and outros, this just kind of serves that purpose. It does so well, and kind of gives a good sailing into the sunset moment for this record, but if something's got to be on the bottom, it's gonna be something like this. Now, Mad Lucas is a track that I wouldn't say is a skip. It's just a song that, when looking at the track listing of this, has components that other tracks do better and still does some cool stuff with them. Like, I love the bass riff on here. I like how it sort of sways with the slower rhythm. I love that the drum production has this intimate feel because it's so quiet, and the delayed effect on Kim's vocals add to that sort of summer atmosphere that this record has going on. The guitar noise in the background is also a cool idea. Even to the point that this song kind of like has a hard cut back into its ideas, sort of lends to the more deconstructed nature of this song that I think the group just sort of refines into better tracks throughout the track listing. It seems like a song written to discuss this sort of loudest voices in the room being the most heard, even if they aren't the most right, which I think is an interesting sentiment for a slower paced song to tackle. It's just, again, when looking at the track listing, this was easily one of those tracks that I could put on the bottom, because when it really hits hard, this track is one of those ones that kind of just feels lesser by comparison, you know what I mean? Flipside is a really awesome song, and given how songs from this have been sampled and transposed into other mediums, I'm surprised Flipside isn't another track in that echelon, because the lead riff of this and how well it fits with those drums when the chorus section kind of comes in, and how the bass kind of dances when the guitars sort of back up in the verse portions, feel like they should be lent to be put into something else. You know, I love the real intensity that the chorus portion reaches. I love the leads in here in general. I think that the guitars sound really good, and I think that's a good riff with a great bass riff below it. As far as taking all of the components that I love from this record and putting them into an instrumental cut, Flipside's probably the best they could have pulled with all of that. Again, similarly to Mad Lucas, it's just a point where, looking at the track listing of this record, they just write some fucking classics. Flipside's a really good instrumental cut, though, and kind of acts as a good ramp up in energy from Do You Love Me Now into I Just Want to Get Along, which carries that energy masterfully. It feels like a good middle of the record cut to keep the track listing, to keep the pacing a little more dynamic, and I think it does so splendorously. While I was surprised to see that Saints was a single, I really shouldn't have been, because this song has one big thing carrying it throughout its entirety, and that's a melody that is infectiously catchy that starts on guitar but gets interpolated into the vocals throughout the chorus. I love the bass that carries the listener throughout the verses into said infectious chorus. And if we're talking about a moment on a summer record where the band gets to bask in the summer sun, Saints is a superb embodiment of that. It's a mid-tempo ass track about the summer sun on a summer record. I love the reverb-soaked guitars that coat Invisible Man, that sort of wash in after Cannonball fantastically in the track listing. If we're talking about a real aquatic side of the summer, Invisible Man is that tenfold. It's a moment that keeps the energy sort of in its own middle-of-the-road realm, but has a good transition into its chorus. It's a song that kind of just washes through its components so masterfully and keep the listener in this hazy realm, while having these lyrics that kind of have this pseudo-spookiness to it of an invisible man and acts as sort of a mischievous force within the summer that you must catch. If we're taking the lyrics literally as it is anyway. It's another really good album cut that acts to sort of add more to the texturing of the record early on and carry the groove. Also, the inclusion of the strings that come in the back half of the track add a component to the sound that gets you sort of reintroduced throughout the tracks on here, and I think adds a lot to the backdrop of this in a really sweet way. Another supremely catchy single that I think ramps up the energy from Mad Lucas very well. Divine Hammer is a track that I've gone back and forth on how much I really love it on this, but I think that the lead riff on this sort of captures that summer sound fantastically, while having another incredible chorus that kind of help keep that catchiness cemented in this album's sort of lyrical sheet, while using the allegory of a divine hammer being somebody to sort of enrich your life in all of the best ways, while not being quite as much of a pushover as the strength of a hammer would suggest. It's got some fun metaphor play in its lyrics that I think lend to sort of more of the snapshot on desires from one's own, people that they meet and people that they're surrounded by, without being too heavy-handed about it. I think it's a great point that the record brings itself to, and while I may not like it as much now as I may have when I was younger,
Like, I really am shocked at where this ended up, because it used to be my favorite song on this album, but when really looking at the track listing and picking apart the things that I do love, this just ended up at this point.
I still think that it's a fucking choice cut on this record, and a great choice for a single if we're talking super catchy moments from this album. You know, I talked about loving the lead riff on Raw, and I love when it comes on here, the build up in the beginning of it, with the guitar production just sounding really gritty, that bass production that comes in after that adds to that fuzziness once things kind of drop out below you. This sort of haziness that bends throughout it, the sort of warbling sounds that add to the summer texturing. There's a lot of sonic palette building that happens throughout the song, and I think that the group pulls together all of those ideas and lets them fit cohesively so very well. I think that acting as a moment to sort of spice up what is admittedly part of the record where the band kind of gets really down-tempo and slow feels like the best place for a track like this to crop up. While I could see somebody sort of feeling like the song kind of meanders a little in its middle, I really love the slow build-up that happens amidst the middle portion of this track. Out of all the tracks to sort of have a reprise, this is the one that feels the most apt for that, given a lot of the components that end up on here. I love the drum groove on here, and again, I like how they just have these sort of ebbing and flowing of these guitars that come throughout this, that act as waves crashing on the shore. Superb album-ass album cut, and a great point in the track listing as a whole.
No bye, no aloha.
The use of this summer as fuck surf rock style instrumentation and have it wash in after Invisible Man before having this moment where it really cuts into an alt-rock style groove and having it all be about abortion and the sort of inner conflict of being an artist and what pregnancy and birth can do to an artist is a great topic of conversation that I think Kim writes a good track out of. I like how the lead riff of this fits both the laid-back surf rock style intro and its more alt-rock second half. The line, "motherhood means mental freeze," is one that I know my mom has etched in her brain, and one that I think is sort of a good encapsulation of the song's thematics into one really strong line. And overall, I think that, again, as far as creating a really bold subject into a song like this, the group does so masterfully. While it's another really, really short song that I could see more ringing out of it, I think both halves of it act as a transitional point in the pacing of the record, and I think that it's a good case of sequencing, shifting within a song, working so effectively. While some of the lyrics on here date back to Kim Deal's high school days, I think that using those lyrics to portray and extend some of the themes that the record talks about, as far as like longing for somebody else, fit like a glove within this track. And I think that as far as slower tracks on here, this song has this evolution to a soundscape that I really enjoy. You know, there's a lot of moments on this track that I really love, on top of the lyrics themselves, like the beginning of the second verse, when she says, "Does love ever end?" and then the guitar line kind of comes in.
Does love ever end?
I love the bridge of this song, when the backing vocals come in as the guitars add more layers. It's a sublime moment that the track builds to very well. And as far as, again, slower moments on this record, this is some of the best, in my opinion. It's honestly one of those tracks I was surprised to not see be a single, given that it's kind of got a catchy, if not small, chorus and a bridge that has its own level of catchiness. Similarly to a track like Saints, it also has this moment where the vocals and guitars share a melody that I think is also just super catchy. Really great track with a lot of fun little moments that add up to being one of the album's best moments, one of the album's best cuts. The lead single off of this album, in the moment where Kim Deal further solidified that she is not just the Pixies' bassist, and is in fact an incredible songwriter in her own regard. It's a song that sort of encapsulates a lot of what this album's highs are into a really catchy, flashy moment.
Which, like, as a kid, I didn't know, but because I was a Breeders fan first, and when I was revisiting this album and learning what this song was about, it kind of blew my fucking mind, because I had already liked Pixies by that point.
It's got a lot of fun drum work, it's got a really good lead bass and a catchy-ass chorus, with a lot of fun moments in it, a lot of fun lines that sort of stick with the listener, like wanting to be a bong within this reggae song. It also accents a lot of the summer sun ideas that the album toys with sonically and lyrically. Obviously, I think that it's a staple 90s classic, and the only reason why it's at this point in the ranking is that I really like this album as a whole, and I think that its album cuts do a lot to showcase other things that this song does have, but in larger doses. Obviously, Cannonball is the moment on this record that a lot of people know, and for good reason. It's a classic-ass jam. A snarky-ass jam with a solid bass groove about spitting at dudes that want to heavily criticize women. Hag has this cattiness to Kim's delivery that I think she just expresses so eloquently. The way she says hag just has this lovely bite to it that I love. I also think that, again, if we're talking about points on the record that just feel so perfectly accented, Hag coming in after the blinding SOS, before the super, super catchy Saints, Hag just kind of keeps the groove cemented. And again, just some sharp-ass writing that I think Kim gets the message across tenfold. to the album, New Year introduces this sort of swaying summer style before throwing you into a good pocket, a sort of recipe that this album toys with a couple of times throughout its track listing, but I think kicks the record off on a great foot. You know, this record sort of acts like the middle point in summer, but I think that the sort of rebirth of Kim Deal throughout this record and having it start with a point like this couldn't have come across any better. Again, I love the noisy guitars that dance around the alternative rock section of this track. I love the main riff. I love the idea of this sort of mantra-style songwriting that the song runs with. It's just overall a strong banger that starts this record off masterfully. It's in and it's out, but so were a lot of the really strong moments on this record, in my opinion. Case in point, the instrumental cut SOS, which just comes in with some whirlwind bass and drums and some noisy guitars, some of which were chopped up and sampled in a different classic from my childhood, Fat of the Land by The Prodigy. And I love that that's a component of this that helped shape my childhood in a way that's different than Fat of the Land. But if we're talking, again, really good instrumental cuts that extend a lot of the sonic ideas that this album has going on in the realms of like noisy guitars, great bass grooves, with this summery sounding sheen over it all. SOS is a really good moment where all those ideas kind of coerce into a good sort of instrumental interlude style cut that I think gets the job done better than any other moment like it on the record proper. And it's partially because I really love that lead guitar riff and that drum line that gets chopped up and sampled. I love how clean it sounds on here, and I think that it's a cool-ass moment that's in this record.
Also, a something classic instrumental rock song whose title is just 3 letters long.
Driving on 9, you could be a shot.
A song that I didn't even know was a cover until doing this video, but Driving on 9, the track that sort of settles the album into its final moments before the raw reprise sort of sails it off into the sunset. While I haven't heard the original by Ed's redeeming qualities, I really enjoy what this version, at least, brings to the table as far as creating what I would argue is one of the best driving in the summer songs ever made. I love the bass that acts as the foundation to this song's groove. I love the additional accompaniment that comes in on this track with the violin, and I think the mandolin that comes in as well. We're talking like one last splash on the album, Last Splash, to act as a good chef's kiss moment. This cover is that. It's so cute, it's so infectious, and it's just perfect.
We were rich once before your head exploded.
It's amazing to me that this song is only 90 seconds long, but if we're talking shorter album cuts on an album stacked with them,
I just want to get along.
takes a lot of the components that the album has lyrically as far as like overcoming the shadows of somebody else, looking for somebody else to act as sort of a better foundation for you. This is sort of a great apex of all of those ideas. I love the bass production on here. The drums having this thunderous touch to the production add to that. The guitar on here, while being not as big of a component as others, I still think sounds good on here. Similarly to SOS, this was also a song that was sampled by The Prodigy on a much later album.
Hair's on fire.
And I think that that's another really fun fact, but easily, if we're talking like short ragers on a record that was sort of a thing in the 90s with some bands, I Just Want to Get Along is a great moment. It's raw, it's to the point, and it gets its message across really well. I like the little guitar solo that crops in as well. This kind of has all of everything this album does in a nice tight little 90-second pocket. Really good jam that I could see not being somebody's favorite for a multitude of reasons, but I like what this song does in its short, simplistic fashion. And easily acts as my favorite moment on a classic summer record. And that is how I would rank Last Splash's track listing from least to most favorite. What did you think about it? What's your favorite song on Last Splash? Let me know in the comments down below. Are you as much of a fan of this record as I am? Let me know that as well. And if you did like this ranking the songs video, give it a like. If you want to see more, consider subscribing. I drop 2 to 4 vids a week depending on what I've got going on. Thank you again so very much for watching. I have been Viral Rack. You guys will get his lives and situations, and I'll see you another day.